I was raised here in Houston. I was raised in a suburb, a little nice area of town, and I was a pretty good kid most of my life. I didn't get in trouble until I was older and found out what prescription drugs was about. I was addicted to prescription drugs for many years. And once the doctor found out that I was addicted to prescription drugs, he cut me off. And I went to the street drugs. And I ended up fighting a 30-year heroin addiction. Along with that addiction came a life of crime. I stole and did whatever I had to do to support my habit. Along with that came 10 felony convictions, 5 stays in the Department of Criminal Justice, and multiple times in and out of the county jail. You would think that one time on the concrete floor of a county jail detoxing heroin would be enough. It wasn't. I still continued to get out and go back to the lifestyle of abusing. At the age of 18, when I graduated from high school, if you would have told me that I was going to be a junkie when I grew up, I would have called you a liar and probably laughed at you, but things didn't work out that way. I was in a very sick marriage for many years. He and I used together, we stole together, we went to prison together. There wasn't a whole lot in my addiction that I didn't do to support my habit. There's probably no sin that I didn't commit. So my first encounter with the Lord was in a county jail. I had an awesome chaplain, and she introduced us to the Word of God. Upon my release to go to TDC, I took that little knowledge I had been given with me. I chose to attend spiritual classes on the weekends and worship in the chapel when church was offered. My first experience with Barber Ministries was on a unit in the late 90s, and I was on the outside work yard, and we were chosen to help set up the tents. So I got to work with Mike's crew for a day or two, and also got the opportunity to go hear Mike speak. And one thing that sticks in my mind even till today is the fact that Mike didn't allow any nonsense. That when the girls would act inappropriately, he would put a stop to it quickly, and I appreciated that, and I also respected it at the same time. So they give out free world soap, bars of soap, which I know may sound strange, but things that people take for granted are very precious when you're incarcerated. And you would have thought I had been given a gift of $1 million, and I was given a gift that weekend, and it was better than anything money could buy. It was encouragement, it was hope in a hopeless life, and that the people in the ministry would take out of their free time to come and spend time with a bunch of people who had made such poor choices and ended up in prison. So all in all, with the heroin addiction, I ended up collecting 10 felony convictions. I had 5 stays in the Department of Criminal Justice. So I learned to adapt in that system fairly well. I was the only one in my family that had ever been to prison. I learned to adapt and get along and stay out of trouble, and I spent a lot of time on my bunk reading my Word. My Word became my best friend. It became my sanctuary. And still today, I can remember verses that I memorized on a bunk, and they hold me today. They still raise up inside of me and cover me when I need help. The last time I was off in my addiction, I can remember driving my car over a bridge and seriously contemplating driving it off the side of the bridge. That I didn't feel like there was a way out for me. I didn't feel like there was hope for me. That I had been bound in that life of addiction and a criminal lifestyle so long that I was to a point of hopelessness. I felt that I was either going to continue to use or die with a needle in my arm or die in prison. And so I didn't like either one of those alternatives, and I didn't want to commit suicide, so I had to search for something different. I had collected 10 felony convictions. My first case was for unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. I stole a car. My second case was credit card abuse, where I abused someone else's credit card. My longest stay in TDC was for burglary of a habitation. I was breaking in people's homes and stealing things they had worked hard for all their lives and selling them to buy dope. So you would think the consequences would have gotten my attention long before they did, but I kept choosing to go back to the drugs because I didn't want to feel. I didn't want to feel that pain. I didn't want to feel that shame. I didn't want to feel that guilt. When I was incarcerated in 2002, I got a chaplain visit, and I had an 18-year-old daughter, and the chaplain had come to tell me that she was found deceased in her apartment. I was told that I was going to get to attend the funeral. They dressed me out, took me to the main building, and I stood there for an hour thinking that my other daughter was coming to pick me up, and TDC told me to go back to my bunk, that the fax from the court had not arrived in time, it arrived too late, and I wasn't going to be able to go. So I didn't get to attend her funeral, and I was like 3 weeks shy of coming home. It took me a long time to surrender. I didn't do it overnight. One of the most miserable places I've ever been in my life was when I would return to the addiction, and I would have some of Jesus on the inside of me and an armful of heroin, and it was very miserable. I was torn, I was jacked up. There's no other way to say it. I was just a mess. And it took me a process to surrender. I didn't do it overnight. It took me a long time to realize that I had to let go of a lot of things in order to receive what Christ had for me. I had to let go of romancing that lifestyle. I had to let go of being able to numb myself with drugs, and I had to let go of my man. That those three things had to go out of my life in order for me to walk with Christ in the way I wanted to, and also in the way He intended for me to. I went years in and out of jails, in and out of prison. I would have a little sobriety, and I would end up going back. And I was in a hopeless situation, and my daughter came to visit me in the county jail, and I have 4 beautiful grandchildren, and due to the noise in the visitation area, we had to write notes and hold them up in the window. And she wrote on her note, she said, "Mom, you've made a career out of this. Unless you do something different this time, me and the children are gone." And I wrote on my piece of paper, "Deal," and I stuck it back up in the window. I began to search for an alternative. I had had drug treatment. The state of Texas had provided me with drug treatment, and I wanted to do a faith base. So I found a discipleship program. I went and stayed 14 months and did some surrendering. I stayed plugged in, did what I had to do, completed the program, came out and got plugged into my local church. I have a strong church family today that encourages me and holds me accountable. It helps me to lead by example today. My first opportunity to speak to a large group of women was also at a stay last year in Gatesville with Barber Prison Ministries. I got to go back inside and speak to a group of ladies that have been chosen as leaders. I got to share a little bit of my story with them and tell them that I was a hopeless wreck at one time, but there is always hope, and that hope is the Lord. So to anyone out there struggling I can give you something that set me free, that God knows the beginning from the end, that He knew I was going to grow up and make mistakes, that I was going to make poor choices, that I would eventually become a heroin addict, and He loved me anyway. I tried everything in this world. I tried drugs, relationships, I tried money, I've tried it all. And nothing satisfied me. I was still lost, rejected, abandoned, and hurt. I had to be willing to get all Jesus had for me, because He's truly the only one who can satisfy. I'm Priscilla Thorne, and I have been restored.